Hi everyone, and welcome to my tutorial on drawing lemons with colour pencil. I've started off with my reference image, and this is the line art that I've taken from my reference image just to speed things up a bit. You can do this by using a lightbox or set up a grid as I've shown in previous tutorials, and then plotting on the line art using that system. We're going to start as usual by picking out the colours we're going to use for this piece of artwork, and I've got my colour picker, my trusty colour picker, and I'm going to start with the lightest colour I can find. I probably put down a very light background colour, even if there wasn't a super light colour here, but there is one, so I'm going to pick out a kind of pale chalky yellow there to pick out these light bits. I can see some greeny yellow areas here, so I'm going to choose some sort of more limey greeny colours, possibly even some deeper mid greens there. And I'm moving on to the really kind of deep yellows that are around these areas here, so probably something more like that, maybe even, and then there's almost like a sort of mustardy, dark mustardy yellows in the shadows here, so I'm going to pick out those, probably maybe even go for something like that. And then you've got some of the kind of the deeper greenier grey shadows around the edges here and there. I think I might be brave and use a sort of almost like a sort of a greyish green, maybe a kind of a browny colour. I think we'll start with those to see how we get on. So we're going to use the very, very pale yellow to lay down the base, and I'm just going to use medium to light pressure to colour in the whole of each of the lemons, the whole thing, even right to the edge here, to get my background colour laid down. Okay, that colour's done. I'm going to go with the pale green colour to pick out these greeny areas here. Use a kind of medium pressure because you're drawing over the top of the paler yellow below, so you want it to come through, and this is quite a pale green, so you'll need a bit more pressure, but you want to pick out this area here and any other kind of areas of green. Okay, that's almost done. I'm going to blend out into the background colour as well, using lightest pressure, just because these two colours do naturally grade from one to the other, you can see on the reference. So I'm going to blend these out really, really lightly using very little pressure. What you might have noticed as well when we were going through the time lapse section of that video, I was using a thin eraser to get rid of some of the darker reference lines. And I recommend that as you colour up your drawing, you use an eraser to remove some of the darkest lines, because eventually you want them to be invisible, obviously. Okay, I've nearly got rid of all of those, but I'm just going to take the chance while you've got all these eraser crumbs on the page to show you another useful tool I use, which is this kind of big soft brush. It's a painting brush, but I use it for clearing objects and, you know, eraser crumbs and bits of broken pencil off my drawing, so that I can avoid using the back or the side of my hand, because the side of my hand might have dirt on it, sweat on it, or even some colour which is transferred from the paper, and I might then just transfer it back if I'm going to wipe my hand across the drawing. So this is a really, really useful tool if you don't want to use your hands to brush away anything from your drawing surface. Now I'm going to use this warmer, deeper yellow for the next layer, and I'm going to use it for both of the lemons, and it's at this stage I'm going to start to try and copy the texture and bring some of the texture that you can see on the lemon rind into the drawing. I'm going to use more pressure to replicate these kind of pits and marks, and lighter pressure for the areas in between, and there are a lot of marks on both these lemons, so I'm just going to play around with it and see if I can start showing the lumps and the bumps and the shadows. And this will be the first layer of that. This will be the kind of marking where those areas are, and then I'll build up with darker colours after that. As I'm adding the next layer, I'm using sort of medium pressure to pick up on the darker areas, and then when I get to the lighter points on the lemon, I'm using a lot less pressure and almost leaving those, the pale background colour below. We will go over those and make them slightly darker, But for now, what we're trying to do is sort of mark out where the patchier, darker colours are with this deeper yellow colour. Okay, now I'm going to use a darker orangier yellow compared to the last one we used. You can see this one has got a little bit more orange to it. I'm going to lay down another layer on top of the lighter yellow below, and I'm going to use more pressure where it's darker, and I'm going to use less pressure where the light starts breaking through, and I'm going to start to really try and pull in some of these kind of darker pitted moments in the skin of the lemon. I'm also going to use this green to start to darken the greeny area at the end of the lemon here, you can see. And when I'm sort of blending towards the rest of the lemon peel, I'm going to use less pressure, but I'm going to slowly try and blend the yellow and the green together. I'm going to start doing that now. Okay, so now I'm going to use this mid-green colour to work into the top of the lemon here, where you can see some of these green tones. We laid down a lighter green tone before, but some of this is being lost with the yellow layers on top. So I'm just going to work into the top of the lemon here with medium to light pressure to get that green really showing. And there are some other moments that are slightly greeny around where the shadows are. So I might add a light layer there, just very, very light, to try and pick up on some of these sort of deeper browny greenier shadows that you can see. Now I'm going to use this orange, mid-orange colour to work into the darker yellow and orangey colours that you can see in the shadow areas on both the lemons here and here, because this is quite pale still and you really want to bring in some of the deeper, warmer, deep yellow tones. And so I'm going to use medium and heavy pressure in the darker, more shadowy areas to try and get the lemon looking a little bit more golden. Okay, I'm now going to use this sort of mid-brown. It's actually called green gold, which is a bit of a funny name, but yeah, it is a kind of a greeny gold colour. And I'm going to use that to work into the shadow areas on both the lemons, and also pick up on the end of the lemon where you've got these kind of brown elements, where you've got the kind of, I guess you'd call it a stalk, I don't know. And on the other side, you've got the same thing. You've only got a tiny weeny element of it showing here in the image, but it's still quite a dark browny greeny colour. So I'm going to use that colour. I'm also going to use this kind of greyish taupe colour for quite a bit of the shadow work. I don't want to use this greeny gold all over the lemon for the shadow work. I want something a little bit more subtle, so I'm going to use this with sort of light to medium pressure to get that kind of lighter greyer shadow across the lemon and pick up on some of the kind of pitted elements on the peel. So I'm going to use both of those together in the next video. Now I'm going to use this mid to dark brown to pick out the darkest points at the ends of the lemons here and here. And also there's a little patch of sort of, I don't know, something dark on the lemon there. I think I might work into the shadowy areas very, very lightly using this pencil because it's quite a dark colour, to see if I can make the shadows pop just a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to use this pale grey to mark out the shadow between the two lemons and just around the outside of the lemon on this side. I'm now going to use this darker grey to work into the harder shadow between the two lemons here, and then I'm going to use light pressure to blend out into the more diffuse shadow around the lemons. Okay, I'm now going to use this really dark grey, a kind of a graphite grey, to pick out the darkest points of shadow right next to the lemons that you can see here. I'm going to use medium pressure right next to the lemons, right here where you can see the darkest bit, and I'm going to use very light pressure to blend out into the grey that I've already laid down. And this will be our last layer. Okay, and that's the last layer. I hope you've enjoyed this lemon tutorial. Check in with pencil on paper to see new ones.